Hello, my name is Dr. Bafemi Oyewumi, and I want to use the opportunity to welcome you to my YouTube channel once again. We'll be looking at taxation this particular moment. We'll be dwelling on taxation, and our focus at this particular point in time is to talk about taxation of small business enterprises, taxation of small business enterprises. Permit me, let me just share my slides that we can continue in earnest. Okay. I believe you can see my screen now. Okay, so that's the presentation mode. That's the topic once again, taxation of small business enterprises. So the focus is how does government subject small organizations, small businesses, small business enterprise, how do they subject them to tax? That's our focus. But today we're looking at the overview of small companies, their structures, and then taxation issues pertaining to taxation as it relates to small business enterprises. So let's just start. Let's look at the expectations. So today we'll be talking about the overview of small business enterprises. That's giving us a definition, what it looks like, what it talks about, and then we shall be looking at the role of small companies in the Nigerian economy, a review of relevant Nigerian tax laws, nature and structure of small companies. That talks about sole proprietorship, partnership, trust, and private companies. And then at the end, we'll be talking about comparative tax analysis of SME structures. So those are the expectations. So let's talk about, the overview of small companies. What are small, companies? What are small business organizations? Small business enterprise exists in the form of small and medium enterprises, SMEs. Small companies have various definitions, given to them by different organizations or institutions, in Nigeria. All right. What are these categories? Some are based on, based on number of employees. Okay. Some are defined as as per the asset base. Some are also defined according to the ownership structure. Some are also defined according to the turnover or the revenue that it generates per time. So let's begin to look at the different types of small organizations. Okay, the first one, or the definition again we're looking at, so definitely we're looking at again, talks about, how do they define these small organizations, small companies. So the first one as given by Smedan. Smedan is Small and Medium Enterprise Development Agency of Nigeria. The first definition that it gives is that small organizations are those organizations that have between 10 and 49 staff. And then they have assets of between 5 and less than 50 million. Okay, they have asset value of between 5 and less than 50 million. And then for medium, they have about 50 to 199 staff. And of course, they also have 50 and less than 50 million, worth of assets. That's, of course, excluding land and buildings. So when we talk about turnover, the Finance Act actually defined SMEs as companies with gross turnover of 25 and below, 25 million naira and below. Now, let's talk about the Companies Income Tax Act. How does it categorize small organizations, small companies, or small business enterprises? It defines it as it defines a small company as a company that has gross turnover of less than 25 million. The medium-sized companies are also defined by turnover that are about 25 million to 100 million. While the large companies, of course, are companies that have turnover of 100 million and above. But of course, with the enactment of NTA, that's the General Tax Act, what that came into being, in 2025, the threshold has been increased to 100 million naira. 100 million naira. Now, what about the definition given by CAMA? That's Companies and Allied Matters Act of 2020. The Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020 classifies a company as small if it satisfies all of the following conditions. Number one, it must be a private company. Number two, it must have maximum turnover of 120 million, maximum net assets of 60 million, and has no foreign member. That's no foreign shareholding, in such an organization. Has no government membership or directors, and directors must hold at least 51% of its share capital. So that's the way CAMA, that's Companies and Allied Matters Act 2018, defines or classifies companies that are small. So you can see that from this whole definition, there are different definitions that have been given, given concerning small business enterprises, and some of them varying from one particular measurement, criteria, okay, and criterion, and as different from the others. So we're talking about the different definitions given by the different institutions, in Nigeria. Now, let's look at the nature and structure, okay, of small businesses. Okay, so small companies exist in the following forms. Number one, sole proprietorship, partnership, trust, and private companies. Let's talk about private sole proprietorship. A sole proprietorship is an unincorporated business with a single owner. In most cases, you have just one person owning a company that is not, or a business rather, that is not incorporated. Okay, it's not incorporated. So what are the features? It's very simple to form. That means it has minimal formalities. So you don't really have to go through the whole lot of starting a company, in the real sense of it. So simple business structure as well. Sole ownership. So you don't really expect to have, this organogram, sales manager, business development person, HR person. Just have, a small structure, small business or simple business structure. Owners pay personal income tax on business profit. That means that the business itself is not taxed. Okay, it's only the owners that are taxed based on the profit of such business. Unlimited liability for the sole proprietor. The sole proprietor does not have to share profit with anybody, because in most cases it's just one person, so it does not have to share profit with anybody. Let's look at the second one. Second one is partnership. This is another form of small businesses. Okay, this is another form of a small business. All right, a partnership is a formal arrangement where two or more parties cooperate to manage a profit-oriented business, sharing ownership, risk, responsibilities, and profits alike. That's what a partnership is, is called. It's an unincorporated business structure that have two or more parties coming together to form an organization, to form a business. Okay, these parties are called partners. So they have agreed to take ownership of the business together. They share the risk together, and then of course they perform different responsibilities, and of course at the end they share profit whenever it happens, or losses as the case may be. Okay, so that talks about partnership. And again, let's look at when we talk about partnership, now we're going to talk about partners. Like we said earlier on, those that come together to have this particular organization are called partners. So let's talk about different types of partners that we have in a partnership. Number one is the general partner. Who is a general partner? A general partner is a partner that's actively involved in the management of the business. Such a partner has unlimited liability with respect to the debts of the partnership. General partners assume full responsibility for all the partnership business debts. Okay, so that's talking about a general partner. Usually he is the one that manages, that coordinates, that runs the business on a day-to-day basis, seriously or actively involved in the management of the business. Okay, and of course they have unlimited liability. General partners have unlimited liability. So that means that if the company runs into debt, the general partner will carry the responsibility of paying the debts. Who is a limited partner? The second type. This type of partner does not participate in the management of the business. Its liability, however, is limited to capital invested in the business. So this one does not get itself involved in day-to-day run of such an organization. All right, its liability is limited to the amount of money invested by him into the business. Okay, that's a limited partner. The second one is sleeping or dormant partner. This is the type of general partner who does not participate in the management of the business, but has unlimited liability, just like the general partner. So that talks about partnership, the second form of small business organizations. So let's go into another form. Let's look at the third one. The third one is okay, they are limited liability companies. They are limited liability companies. So when we talk about limited liability companies, we are talking about a company that has people coming together voluntarily, association of people that have come together in a voluntary form. Okay, nobody is coercing them. It's a voluntary organization, voluntary association of people coming together, all right, to form a business, to start a business and bringing their different capitals into the business, bring their different, funds into the business. And of course, they invest in the shares of such a company. And one major important feature of this particular business is the fact that they are limited. I mean, their liability is limited, the amount of money that are contributed to form the business. It exists in the eye of the law, and it's also described it as an artificial person created by the law, having perpetual succession and the common seal. So the word company itself is from a Latin word, and it's a combination of two Latin words. The first one is cum, meaning together, and panis, meaning bread. And what does that mean? A company means any bread together. Any bread together. This word came to be substituted. It's the word that came, for as a substitute to the name of that's as a substitute to company. So what we talk about companies today is a combination of two words, come and panis. Okay, one is to come together, another one is bread. So the two of them coming together to bring about our end together so that we also have something to put on the table. All right, so that's talking about limited liability companies. So let's look at the features of limited liability companies. Features of limited liability companies. Number one, a company is an artificial person and has a separate legal entity. Okay, so it is an artificial person, it's an individual, it's a person. Okay, it has a separate legal identity. The ownership is divorced from management. So meaning that those who own it, okay, they are also different from the managers of such an organization. The liability of the owners is limited to the amount of money invested into the company or in the company. All right. Then ownership can change due to transfer of shares. So they can actually exchange or change ownership. So anybody can come and say, I want to invest into this business, and then buy the shares of the company, and then they move on. They become a shareholder. They become owners of the business. Of course, it also has perpetual succession. What it means is that when you have a limited liability company, it is meant to thrive, in an unlimited, fashion. So that means that year in, year out, they keep on existing because the management is different from the owners of the business. Now, let's look at private limited companies, because there are different types of companies. But today we are focusing on private limited companies. Private limited companies. So let's look at a private company is stated in its memorandum of association to be a private company. So that's the first quality. That's the first feature. When you see a limited liability company, it's stated as such in its memorandum of association. You must have a minimum of 1 shareholder and a maximum of 50. Has a minimum authorized capital of 100,000. The company shall not, without the consent of its member, sell assets having a value of more than 50% of the total value of the company's asset. A member shall not sell the member's shares in the company to a non-member without first offering those shares to the existing members. So that's why it's called private. It is limited in terms of number. Okay, of course, also has a particular share capital that must be taken as the authorized share capital. That's 100. All right. And when it comes to dealing, selling shares, selling assets of the company, everybody must be carried, along. What are the other features? What are the other features that we have, as per private limited company? Number 6 is that a member or a group of members acting together shall not sell or agree to sell more than 50% of the shares of the company to a person who is not a member, unless all the other members are saying no. The other members are saying no. That's when they can actually sell to people who an outsider. Okay, cannot transfer his shares easily. Okay, because a private company cannot just transfer his shares. All right, cannot invite the public to subscribe for any shares or debentures of the company. Cannot just say come and invest. You can't just go to the public because they are not listed on the exchange. Again, allotment of shares does not require the approval of Security and Exchange Commission. So there's no major institutional framework that has been defined for them to say your shares must be listed, and of course you can only allot. You don't really need to do all of that for a private organizations. Okay, so private limited company. The fourth one is what is called or known as trust. Okay, trust. So when we talk about trust, a trust has 4 fundamental elements. Okay, have 4 fundamental elements. Trust. Number 1 is the trustor. Number 2, a trustee. Number 3 there, asset. That's the trust property. And then number 4 rather, now is a beneficiary. So we have a trustor, a trustee, an asset, as a trust property, then the beneficiary. So what is a trust business? What does it look like? Remember, we are talking about, how to assess small business enterprises to tax. And we're looking at the different, types of small business organizations or enterprises. So those are the organizations we're looking at. So the fourth one is trust. Trust. Okay. So a trust is a fiduciary legal arrangement where a settlor or grantor transfers ownership of assets, that's the property, money, or shares, to a trustee who holds and manages them for the benefit of a beneficiary. All right, that's what a trust is. And if you look at this other definition given here, it's quite explicit, quite explicit. And what are we talking about here? A trust is a legal arrangement where one party, now the settlor, okay, transfers his legal rights, interest in property, these are the type of property now, shares, money, land, buildings, okay, to another, the trustee, who holds the property on behalf of and for the benefit of certain persons, the beneficiary. Okay, so we talk about a trustor, a trustee, the asset, and then the beneficiaries. So one is the owner. He gives a trustee the right and pass the ownership to the trustee. The trustee will begin to manage the property, that's the asset, okay, for the purpose of sharing the benefit to the listed or agreed beneficiaries of the trust business, the trust asset. Okay, that's what this particular trust. That's what we have to understand here. Okay, so a legal document is usually drawn or prepared and is called the trust deed. Trust deed, it defines the trust and how the terms and the conditions of the trust are settled. How the terms and conditions of the trust are settled. So that's talking about the trust business. Now let's look at the types, because we have several types of trust businesses. Let's look at the number 1. We have living or testamentary, funded or funded, revocable or irrevocable. These are the different categories: living or testamentary, funded or unfunded, revocable or irrevocable. Now let's look at the different types. Okay, let's look at the different types so that we're able to have a better understanding of this this type of business. Okay, now living trust. A living trust is a written document in which an individual asset are provided as trust for the individual use or benefit during his lifetime. So a trustee is named where the trust is established. The person that is in charge of this particular asset will be in charge, manage it, and then, of course, begin to transfer the assets to the beneficiaries when the owner of the trust must have passed on. So at the death, when the person dies, that's when the trustee will be able to take, the asset and begin to share or transfer, depending on the trust deed that has been signed and prepared between the two of them. Now, the second one is testamentary trust. Testamentary trust. What's a testamentary trust? A testamentary trust is also called will trust. Will trust. It specifies how individual assets are designated after the trustee's death. It is not established until after the trustee, dies. So that's testamentary trust. And then the third one is revocable. Revocable, as the name implies, it means that it's possible for such a trust to be revocable or irrevocable. Okay, revocable or irrevocable. When we talk about revocable trust, it means that it can be changed or terminated by the trustor. Okay, during during his or her lifetime. Okay, it's revocable, so it can change it. It can terminate it. He or she, it's possible for him to just terminate it or change it while he's still, alive. The other one is irrevocable trust. Irrevocable trust. Now, testamentary trust that we defined earlier on, okay, are generally irrevocable. And so it means that once they are established, okay, they cannot be revoked. Okay, they cannot be revoked by will if the trustor is still alive. Okay, cannot even be revoked. So it means that the fact is that it is unalterable. All the assets that have been given and moved out, to the trustee will be managed in order to avoid all sorts, a lot of issues that might likely arise when the person is the one handling it. Okay, so that's an irrevocable trust. The next one is funded or unfunded. So when we talk about funded, it means that the assets have been provided and given to the trustee, okay, to manage. With a funded trust, a trustor places assets into the trust during his or her lifetime. All right, but when it is unfunded, what are we referring to? An unfunded trust consists only of trust agreement with no funding. So it means that such a trust can become funded upon the trustor's death or remain unfunded. Okay, so that's what it means now. So there is no asset basically that has been deposited or being given to the trustee, to manage. So it is at the end of the expiration of maybe when the man dies, that's when the trustee will bring all the different assets owned by the different person and owned by the the trustor, put them together, okay, and then begin to manage. So what is important here is that it is better for it to be funded while the owner is still alive than to remain unfunded. Okay, so that's talking about a trust business. Okay, so what are the other matters that we are looking at here that we have to bring to the fore? Number one is taxable income. What type of income will be taxed at the end of the day? Trusts are taxed on income from all sources, both local or foreign. Okay, both local or foreign. All right, so all the incomes, all the money is coming, revenue coming in, all right, they are brought together for the purpose of being taxed. All right. So whether it is local or foreign, remember these assets are tradable. These assets can be used to bring in additional money when they are invested on behalf of the beneficiary. So whatever it is that is coming will be in that will be the income to be taxed. Trustee responsibility. What's the responsibility of the trustee? Trustees must file tax returns, manage compliance, and of course are responsible for tax on income not distributed to beneficiaries. So that's the trustee responsibility. The beneficiary liability. Distributed income is taxed as personal income in the hands of the beneficiary. So the beneficiaries too, they have their liabilities. So there is taxable income, trustee responsibility, and then beneficiary liability. Okay, beneficiary liability. Now let's look at the next slide, the purpose. Why are we talking about trust? Okay, trust as specific purpose vehicles that can be used to protect assets belonging to a person and transfer them into the right hands after the passage of the original owners. Okay, so rather than allowing assets to just be flying around everywhere, they bring all these assets together and hand it over to a trustee who will now manage it. And then at the demise of the original owners, then they will now begin to give those assets to their beneficiaries. Trusts are also meant to hold and employ assets in safety from creditors or others that might have a claim on them after the trustor's death. Okay, so the trustees are meant to hold and employ those assets in safety from creditors in order for them to be able to share them after the trustors must have passed on. Trust can also be used to secure assets for specific purposes, such as beneficiaries' education and to help them to start a business. Trust provides privacy, avoid probate, and allow for controlled asset distribution, making them essential for estate planning, tax optimization, and asset protection from creditors. All right. So rather than giving those assets, peradventure, maybe those children, the beneficiaries are still quite young. Those assets are given to a trustee who will manage it, and in the process of managing it, they generate revenue, and their revenue and the asset eventually will be passed on and shared and given to the listed beneficiaries by the trustor. That's the one that the trustor must have actually listed before his passage, before his or her demise. Okay, let's look at the key roles of small businesses in Nigeria. Number one, improve the standard of living. Small businesses, whether in the manufacturing or service industry, such as retailing or entertainment, contribute a great deal to improving the standard of living of people residing in society where they are found. Okay, so that's the first role there. The second one is job creation and employment. Small businesses are the largest employers in Nigeria. They provide jobs for youth, women, and even retired people, retirees, thereby reducing social ills and poverty. Okay, it has been said that SMEs have the capacity to generate employment, for over 60 million people, and they are accounting for roughly about 84% of the country's workforce. So people who work in SMEs are quite huge. So SME create jobs and employment for the teeming youths in the country. Again, they also contribute to GDP. That's the gross domestic product. All right. So they also contribute largely to it. They contribute nearly about 50% to Nigeria's GDP, demonstrating their massive impact on nation's economic, output. What are the other roles? They're also there for economic diversification. So rather than concentrating, on those large-scale businesses, they try to expand, and then they are moving away from the core businesses to other areas where they'll be able to generate economic benefits. So economic diversification is possible with the which is made possible by small businesses. Okay, and of course they help in technological and industrial development because SMEs, they have short-term gestation period. Okay, so they quickly move to develop technology, industry, and all of that, so that to be able to, help the country to grow. They account for nearly 90% of the manufacturing sector and 50% of the industrial jobs, forming the backbone of domestic industrial growth. They provide promising alternatives for countries desiring fast industrial development. Again, they also help innovation and entrepreneurship. Okay, they are good incubators for new products. They come up with new products, new ideas, new strategies, so that will help them to expand, their horizon. Okay, and they drive local innovation and local inclusion. They bring about the entrepreneurial skills into the market, and then they help the economy to grow. What about local community development? They are also very, very relevant in this area. They are found everywhere. In all the states, they are everywhere. So they help in developing the local environment as well. So that's talking about the roles that they play. Now, I want us to look at, because the whole idea is to look at the comparative tax analysis of this SME structure. That's why we're looking at them. So what comes to play when we talk about taxation of these businesses? Okay, we have this table here that I've been able to come up with. All right, business structure tax, comparison table. All right, so we have the different features on the extreme left rather of the screen. So we have the legal status. Okay, so we have the feature. We have this for sole proprietorship. We also have this column, and then we have for partnership, and then private limited companies, and then trust and settlement. So we have the different companies, okay, making small and medium, enterprises. So when you look at the feature, legal status, for example, we're saying that for a sole proprietorship, okay, they have no separate legal entity. The same thing goes for partnership, but for a private limited company, it has separate legal entity. We have defined that earlier on. Then for trust and settlement, they have fiduciary arrangement. What about taxation? Let's look at this feature. It's very important because we're still going to in the next section, we're talking about how to tax. That's the main focus of this particular, course. All right. So proprietor. Now, profit is taxed in the owner's hand. The same thing goes for partnership. But this time around, it is taxed in the hands of the partners. But when it comes to private limited company, profit is taxed separately in the company's name. And then, of course, dividend income is also taxed in the shareholders' hands. But when it comes to trust, distributed income is taxed in the hands of the beneficiaries, whereas those ones that are the part of the income that is yet to be distributed, okay, is being taxed in the hand of the trustee. Applicable tax laws. We have Personal Income Tax Act, okay, for sole proprietorship. All right. Then we have Personal Income Tax Act for partnership as well. We have Companies Income Tax Act, that's CITA, for private limited companies. Then CITA and PITA, depending on whether it's a company that is managing those assets or maybe an individual. All right. So if it's an individual, then companies income tax is applicable. If it's an individual, then PITA is applicable. All right. Tax rate, because it's taxed in the hands of the individual, it has a progressive 7 to 24% and then 0 to 25%. Okay. That's for post 2025 NTA. That's Nigerian Tax Act. Now, it is important for you to take note of the fact that because the NTA has just been released and just started, it became operational in this year. Most of the things we're talking about will be relating to the previous, year's laws. Okay, it's important that please take note of that. Okay, so Companies Income Tax Act. That's this for private limited liability company. We've said that earlier on. Turnover, okay, for tax rate, the turnover is from 1 to 25 million is 0. Then from 25 million to 100 million is medium. Turnover of 100 million, it is above 100 million is 30%. Okay, so these are the different features, and then what's applicable to either sole proprietorship, partnership, private limited company, or trust. So we have the different, parameters, and of course the different aspects of its application, relate as they relate to the different organization, types of organization. So we have the threshold exemption, and then we have invertible transactions. So these are the basic, comparison that we can bring out, when it comes to tax matters and the structure, organizational structure of these small businesses. So that's that will bring us to the end of the class today. Thank you for being part of it. Again, if you're yet to subscribe, and if this particular class has been of immense benefit to you, why don't you just subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can always be part of whatever lecture or class that have been dropped, that will still be dropped in the future. So for this particular lecture tonight, you need to, this hour, you need to subscribe, and then you need to comment. You need to also share so that everybody who will also be taking, looking at it or watching it, will also benefit, from it. Thank you very much for being part of it. Till I come next time, stay blessed. Bye for now.